Everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another weekly watch list video brought to you by DeepView. As always, we're going to run through kind of my wider weekly list here of some potentially actionable ideas. Just in general, as I mentioned in my stock market outlook video last week, let's actually go over to the market ETFs quickly. The QQQ is definitely very strong, but also short-term extended. A lot of names are as well. So ideally, we do get a rest for 1, 2, 3 weeks, just going sideways, correcting through time rather than price. And that could set up a lot of really nice charts. But I have collected, 20 or so names that are potentially actionable. Some of them need a little bit more work. And some of these are also short-term extended. I'm just kind of watching them as they develop. So let's go ahead through these names. Let's go ahead and clear the sort here and just go ahead by symbol. So AEHR watching for a push through this level around 33.43 on volume. Moving up the right-hand side, nice respect for that 200-day moving average. And let's go ahead and show the charts as well and scroll this over. You can see that we do that. Decent estimates for the next quarter are expected, and you've got some nice growth here in this name. So definitely want to watch through that key pivot. Moving on, we've got AI, definitely short-term extended here, and we've got earnings coming up here on May 31st. I believe that's next Wednesday, so definitely keep that in mind, but basically watching for an earnings opportunity. I traded this previously here, sold into strength, and we'll obviously revamp if it does break out on earnings, have a really nice earnings gap, but definitely getting short-term stretch, but super powerful off the bottom here. AMD also short-term extended. You can see some of my notations here, some potential entries lower down through this level as well as this level. It's been on my watch list previously, wasn't able to execute well on this one, but I'll be watching for a pullback into the 21 EMA, and this is just kind of a good gauge rather of institutional appetite right now. So I'd love to see this pullback into the 21 EMA, a 10 EMA even if you're a little bit faster, and just consolidate nicely and set up maybe a 3 weeks tight or some other spot where you can manage risk effectively. But definitely short-term stretch and not really looking to execute Monday or even Tuesday. Well, I can't do Monday because it's Memorial Day, but not looking to execute within the next few days, just kind of watching this one for a potential development of a setup. Moving on, we've got ARLO going quiet and tight here after a really strong move here, and volume is declining overall, and basically watching for a breakout on high volume going over to a short-term time frame. Let's take a look at the 65-minute here. You can see we're going quiet and tight. You could buy it through a push through 9.46 and manage risk at this higher low if that would form, or just below these moving averages. Going back to a daily, let's take a look at ARRY in the solar space here, forming a nice longer-term base and had a fake breakout, pullback, and then, decent action late last week. It did pull in, but nice oops reversal here on this Friday, and basically watching for, a shorter term entry here as it pushes back towards this key pivot level. Really nice growth expected in terms of revenue as well as earnings. Moving on, we've got CELH, which is pulling back here. It's below the HVC, so I'm watching for a reclaim of that, as well as just a reversal, higher low setup. Maybe it lets that 21 EMA catch up a little bit more, but nevertheless, definitely a name to watch as it's right at all-time highs. Nice earnings gap up on huge volume and really strong estimates in terms of earnings and sales. You can see acceleration is expected in terms of EPS as shown by this bar here in DeepView. Moving on, we've got CMG, Chipotle, pushed higher, couldn't quite hold the breakout, pulled back in, formed a range, and now we have a nice quiet inside day on Friday. So you could buy an inside day and up setup here. And I like how this is acting. It's a bigger cap stock. Institutions like it as well. And just in a nice trend above a rising 21 EMA and forming a little bit of a sideways consolidation. So definitely want to see immediate profit here. Use your moving averages just below this level or the higher low setup to manage your risk, and just watching for a breakout on large volume from this mini 2, 3, 4 week consolidation. CRSP, a lot of the genomics related stocks are acting pretty well. This doesn't look super great on the daily, very powerful, of course, on nice volume, but a little bit whippy and wide and loose here. But you did have a nice inside day on this past Friday. But I was looking at the 65-minute time frame, and it's forming out a little bit nicer. And you've got this 65-37 pivot, and definitely want to see it push off those moving averages, get at a profit, manage risk below those moving averages or this higher low. And then ideally we get a breakout from this consolidation, which you can see was rejected down from here on May 22nd and 23rd. CSIQ, another solar name that is acting pretty well, setting up just below the base pivot, just like ARRY, a little bit stronger recently. Very powerful off lows, then a little bit of a sideways consolidation. You could have bought it through these 2 days highs. That would be a short-term pivot, but it's a little bit early. Ideally, we go quiet and tight for 1-2 more days, form really nice actionable entries, and then push higher on a nice volume. But I like the volume profile here in this name. You can see volume has dried up a little bit during these 3 days. Moving on, we've got Duolingo, just kind of going up and down alongside this base pivot. Ideally, we get an inside day and then an inside day and up setup, manage risk at the higher low, just below the 21 EMA. Very tight and logical area to manage risk against. Nice action on Friday, but I'd like to see, as I mentioned, one more tight day before this really gets going. And then ideally, we get a very strong breakout day, making its way further up the right-hand side of this longer-term base. Moving on, we've got IMGN, a huge gap up here, went quiet, tried to push higher, couldn't quite make it, forming another range here. Nice tight day here on Friday on, looks like the lowest volume since this consolidation gap up day. And let's go to a 65-minute time frame. You can see it's getting very, very tight. So you can buy it through 14.18, but basically just watching for, a huge burst in volume and nice price action. And ideally you get a very strong close, set your stops at break even and let it work. But this is a biotech, so definitely keep that in mind. There's definitely some added risk here with these names. Moving on, we've got IoT, which has earnings next week. That's pretty much what I'm watching for on June 1st. Break out through this base and see continue up the right-hand side of this consolidation. Really nice estimates in terms of earnings as well as sales growth. KRYS, similar to IMGN, but a little less developed here. Nice breakout in this biotech. You can see that it's a lot more speculative, not really any earnings or revenue to speak of, but very strong price action and getting tight here, basically watching for a push higher on volume. MRVL in the semi space had the highest volume in over a year here on this past Friday, basically watching for the HVC or similar consolidation setup, and basically looking for intraday entries in this name to see if that momentum can continue. NNOX had a nice move higher on a catalyst and now is forming out a consolidation below 20 and pull back into around 15, watching for either further pullback into the 21 EMA area on a dry up in volume or for a push higher and intraday setup here. And we'll have to see whether this can get going. The story is pretty interesting. I don't know too much about it, but nice estimates in terms of EPS as well as sales growth. And good to see that finally got FDA approval for this off the bottom setup. And it's consolidating right back into kind of this key technical area, which is always good to see that confluence. So as NNOX, moving on, we've got NVIDIA, similar to MRVL, watching for a setup here to see if we can consolidate for a few days and then push higher. Moving on, we've got NXT, and this is on a weekly, a 3 weeks tight. You can see that right here, and very nice action, and basically watching for a push higher here. You could buy it through 40.43. I'll be watching for a little bit earlier on an intraday time frame on a 65-minute. Let's take a look at that. You've got a clear pivot right at 39.78, and you can manage risk off that higher low if it does push us higher, and just below these moving averages. You can kind of see how I like to manage my risk on the 65 right as it's moving off these moving averages. Moving on, we've got Shopify, which has a pivot right here on the 65-minute time frame, right below the 50 SMA, which is declining at around 60. And then going over to the daily chart, you can see a nice breakout, and now it's pulled back to that 21 EMA on this higher time frame. This day here does give me a little bit of pause as we really easily broke below this structure that we had been forming. It tried to break out, then failed. But if it can push out from here and really get to the top of this base or consolidation, that would be constructive. But this bar is just something I'm noticing. Just want to express that to you guys as well, that this does represent, not the best setup here because it was so weak on this day, a pickup in volume. And definitely watch out if it breaks below this level, it could revisit these lows of this day. Moving on, we've got SMAR, Smart Sheet, moving up the right-hand side of its base as well, right near the top of this prior base, this shorter-term base, and forming a little bit of a handle. I like to see, 1-2 more days of tightness and then a push higher on volume. SWAV, you could buy it through short-term pivot around 283, 284, going to a 65-minute time frame. You've got similar levels around 283.86. Manage your risk at that higher low or the 21 EMA. Good to see support at the 200-day on this lower time frame. And going back to the daily, you can see it's consolidating right at that 21 EMA. Moving on, we've got Tesla, which maybe needs 1 or 2 days here. I'd like to see that before it tries to pop through the 200-day moving average. But constructive action, this is a mega cap. This theme has been working, and we might see money kind of rotate into this name. And lastly, we've got Uber, which is right at the top of this longer-term base and pulling back into that area, that base pivot area, as well as the 21 EMA, and basically watching for an intraday setup to push higher from this level. Nice tight day here on Friday. Let's go to a lower time frame, and you can see you've got a pivot right at 38.78. So watching for a big burst in volume through that level and very strong price action as well. So that's pretty much it for my focus list for this upcoming trading week. My wider list, every day I pick kind of 3 to 5 setups from this larger list and really focus on those in the morning. Use a lot of alerts, all of that to let the machine work for me, and that way I can really focus on my execution. So hopefully you enjoy this video. Let me know your favorites from these names right here. And if you have any others that you're watching carefully, let me know down below in the comment section. I love to see what you guys are taking a look at. And also, I love to hear your thoughts on the market if you didn't provide them in yesterday's video. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, please go ahead and take the time right now to leave me a like down below. Really helps me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. And with that said, see you guys in future videos. Take care.